We'll have Michael Wagner on today. It's going to be a good show, breaking down some big news coming from Star Atlas, but also what the potential future is for this game. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Let's just get started into a couple of things when you look at Star Atlas. One of the comparisons I think that would be relevant in this particular case is Star Citizen. And if you look at the size of where this MMO is going, you look at daily players around 412,000. You can see the capacity here is pretty significant in terms of projects like what Star Atlas is potentially going into. The other thing you have to look at when you look at Star Citizen is just the revenue. I mean, this is the revenue over, since 2012, which is been pretty significant, and then just kind of skyrocketed right here. So this kind of shows you the potential of how Web3 games could explode onto the scene. And I think, Star Atlas is one of those that we've been tracking for quite some time. Funds raised right now, $674 million. That's a good example of why the demand is so high for games like this. And that's the big key here as we start to see Web3 really take off. I think 2024 will be the year to see a lot of this kind of move. And if you look at, just to give you an example, but you can kind of see Solana starting to really move in, almost 3 million in terms of transactions. And I think that's the big question here, is as we start to see a lot of this kind of growth, not only with Star Atlas, you look at the size of their current ecosystem, 4,500 players, total transactions, currently around 6.7% of Solana. That's pretty significant, considering this game has really not even got off the ground yet in terms of an explosion. But I think it's coming pretty quick. We're going to be doing an announcement today as well, just to give you kind of a little bit of the revenue comparison right here with Star Atlas as well, starting to accelerate toward the end of last year. Total transactions, trading volume starting to move. So all of this good news for what's happening within the Star Atlas game frontier. And then, of course, big project changes. And if you look at just their roadmap, this is another, I think, one of the things I really like about Star Atlas in general is the fact that you can go in and really take a look at the current release, where they are, get active on any of these, start to really understand kind of the focus of the project itself. And there's quite a bit happening. So we wanted to kind of dive in a little bit deeper. So we thought, let's get Michael Wagner on the show today. Let's bring him on in. Hey, Michael, nice to see you.
Hey, Paul. Great to see you again. It's been a really incredible past year for us, and long time coming busy for us to chat again. We have been insanely busy. In the face of a lot of adversity, we have a number of great updates to share. So happy to be here and dive into all of that with you.
Let's just get into Starbased, because that's the big announcement. Obviously, that update goes live tomorrow, today being April 1st. April 2nd. Tell me a little bit about what's going to happen and kind of give our viewers a little bit more insights to where you guys are going.
If I may, just as a preface for the uninformed on what we're developing here, we do have a number of different product lines. Our flagship product is that Unreal Engine showroom module that's out now. That's on Epic Game Store. We have Sage, Starbased. This is a browser-based game. It's where all of our on-chain gaming logic lives right now. It's also where the economy is fully activated. And then separately from that, we have a mobile application that's in development, which is a bit of a fitness trainer and kind of move to earn app. But yes, very excited about the release that we have up and coming tomorrow in Sage. And this is the next evolution of the economy. Presently, the on-chain mechanics include things like movement and coordinates, inventory, localized inventory, fleet management, extraction or mining of resources, crafting systems, combat systems coming in the future. What's really cool about all of this is, again, they live on Solana. Solana serves largely as our game engine, and this opens up a wide world of opportunity for composability and co-development. With the Starbased release, we see the first really team-based mechanics roll out. Now, visually, when you look at this, we like it. We like the UI, but it's not necessarily what people expect when they see AAA gaming and Unreal Engine content and beautiful cinematic quality worlds. But really, it is the convergence of what we're doing in the web with accessibility for players to get into the game and get into the economy, which is where the real benefit and potential of Sage lives. And then also that interoperability with our other game systems, whether you're in browser taking an action or in Unreal Engine taking an action, you see the replication and reconciliation of those player actions because they're all calling effectively on the same data set, which is a data set that lives on Solana. But what players will be doing here is participating on a faction level between one of the three factions, extracting resources, crafting items, contributing those to Starbase construction and upgrading, and then maintaining those facilities. So it's where we're really seeing players for the first time go out and secure for themselves territory within various regions.
I was looking at your tweet that kind of broke this news here. A couple of things that I wanted to call attention to. One is the 50% reduction in the Atlas emissions, so a big point. And then also, can you explain a little bit more around the ships, because they're no longer going to be supported in the faction claims? How is that transition going to happen?
There are quite a few things coming, and just to be clear, the reduction in Atlas earnings is specific to that faction fleet application that we launched all the way back in December of 2021. Now, this was a much more passive version of gameplay. So players would enlist their ships to a faction. They would manage a set of 4 different resources that included food, fuel, ammunition, and toolkits. And to the extent that they had non-zero balances on those 4 resources, they were earning Atlas. So this was the initial Atlas emission mechanism and gameplay that we introduced. And our intention has always been to transition out of that through time and to reward active gameplay. And now that we're making so much progress on Sage Labs, we can actually further incentivize participation in this style of gameplay. So essentially what we're doing is saying we're tapering off the earnings from Faction Fleet, the passive style of earning, and we're actually moving those Atlas emissions into Sage, where active players are then able to produce loyalty points, they're producing XP, they're progressing along a licensing system. So you're actually participating in MMO mechanics of leveling up a character and progressing along, and then you're also able to earn Atlas while you play Sage Labs. So it's not that we're reducing overall the top level Atlas emissions. It's actually slightly higher now than it has been historically, but we are reducing the earnings in that passive style of gameplay.
Is this something that you feel is going to be well received, I guess, from the community?
Not only is it well received right now, we have really incredible retention metrics around the people that are participating. Now, I will note that Sage itself is really more targeted towards the crypto native user, the person that already has a wallet, that knows how to secure their wallet, that knows how to connect that wallet to the game and make transactions. To be clear, we have no account registration process whatsoever. The sole mechanism for engaging in Sage is a wallet connect. No user registration, which is actually really cool, although it does introduce some onboarding challenges for those people that would be interested in getting into it that maybe are not as familiar with crypto or Web3 in general. Now, we have some plans for how we simplify the process through time, but one of the things that I've been a staunch proponent for through the history of the company, and even in the face of a lot of strong narratives of supporting a more Web 2.5 approach or obscuring or abstracting the blockchain away from the product itself, I've been a big proponent for being really on the nose and in your face with the blockchain element of it. And it's because what we're looking at here and the reason why we're introducing and integrating this technology is not just because the tech itself provides benefits to the users, but because there's a philosophical, ideological underpinning to decentralization and censorship resistance and permissionless systems. And so I genuinely think it's a disservice to the user if we abstract that away and we don't promote the fact that the user is actually using this new technology that they can see a lot of benefits on, not just in Star Atlas, but in the broader crypto space or Solana ecosystem.
I think at the same time, you kind of touched on it, is that eventually you're going to see onboarding from mass audiences. People who are starting to get into Web3 gaming, maybe for the first time. They're not completely crypto native. And you talked a little bit about onboarding as being one of the big challenges kind of going forward. This is something we talk about with devs and project leads all the time. I mean, what would that look like for Star Atlas in the coming, say, 12 to 18 months down the road?
I don't know how many people know this, but we've essentially created our own fork of Solana. We call that AtlasNet. We use that for our own internal mechanic testing. So it's really a non-real economy, non-monetary based version of Solana that we can run transactions on and test our code. Now, the upside potential to that is that we can actually run this AtlasNet. We can connect users to AtlasNet. We can give them assets for free because they don't have any real world value. It's not dilution of our existing assets. And they can get in, access the game, start to play, get a sense for whether or not they like it. And then based on their impression of the game, they can make the decision to make that switch over to mainnet. So we have a lot of different paths forward on how we can simplify the process with, say, one-click onboarding, in which case the user wouldn't even know that they have a crypto wallet that they're using. But that is only on the AtlasNet. That is only on the non-real economy version of the game.
When you go in through the buying process of buying your packs, right there is a good example, USDC and Sol, in terms of acquisition. So I do think eventually that, for those who are not maybe crypto savvy, being able to jump right into, regular fiat or, Apple, all sorts of different platforms out there that eventually, of course, would speed up the onboard and the payment process going forward. So that's good to hear that you guys are going in that direction. I want to talk a little bit about transactions, because this is one of the things that I guess concerns me a little bit. I look at the size of where Star Atlas is today in comparison to Solana, and then you go back and look at Star Citizen. I mean, you could see you guys have a growth track here that potentially has some similarities. With that being the case, you also have to consider there's a lot of people out there right now that are developing on Solana going, wait a minute, we're getting tagged with some pretty heavy fees here. This was just a quick one right here. Drip spent almost $18,000 in fees on Solana just in the last 6 days. All right. So first of all, with all this on chain, will Solana fees skyrocket? What are your thoughts?
I don't think they'll skyrocket, and I think what Vibhu was saying there is accurate. It's not misrepresentative, but also Drip has millions and millions of transactions probably going on, right? So, and Drip specifically is covering all of the user transaction costs. Now, our users are probably processing 3,000 to 5,000 transactions per day on average. However, these are still sub 1 penny. I think the highest fees that I've seen on Solana so far are about 0.5 cents per transaction. It is something that we're tracking closely. Obviously, when you have all of your game logic on chain and when you're essentially forcing all of your users to process a lot of transactions to play, the underlying cost is critical. And it was one of the early factors that went into the decision to build on Solana in the first place. Now, some of that is out of our control. Some of it is within our control, being able to integrate and implement things like priority fee structures and allowing user customization of what level of priority fee they want to pay. So you could opt for perhaps lower performance, less reliability in confirmed transactions, but pay a much lower cost, or you could pay a higher cost with some greater assurance that all of your transactions are going through. All of that aside, I think what is really promising and encouraging to me is we have a couple of major updates coming to Solana. I know our team is highly anticipating the 1.18 rollout to the validators, and we're not sure if this is going to be the silver bullet that fixes the outstanding issues right now, but priority fees themselves aren't really working as they are supposed to be working.
Exactly.
So you have users that are paying more money than they need to with no greater reliability in transaction confirmation. So hopefully 1.18, and of course the thing that everybody's talking about is Fire Dancer, and when is that coming online? And this has the potential to 10x the transaction throughput from the purported 65,000 transactions per second from Solana up to greater than 500,000, 600,000 transactions per second. So what we understand as a team is that we're building on beta technology, and we're also pioneering the bleeding edge of tech in a lot of ways. And so there are going to be some growing pains alongside that, but I have a lot of confidence in Solana itself. And then our team is also doing a lot to optimize and package up transactions in a way that minimizes or mitigates those costs.
It's good to hear you say that, because you guys obviously are so close to the project in understanding, kind of where the advancements are going. We're going to be doing a world premiere here, as I understand, on our show today, and that is showing a gameplay trailer of Surge. So we're going to cut to that trailer. This will be the first time. Is that right, Michael?
That's right. This has never been debuted before. We held that exclusively for you, Paul.
Let's do it, man. Let's go ahead and cut to it. All right, so as you guys can see, a big reveal there on Surge. First of all, fantastic IP. The concept of what Star Atlas looks like in terms of really a AAA studio kind of look and feel. Kudos to you guys for sure. Tremendously on point there. So that's a lot of work.
Yeah, thank you. This is a really cool mini game fleet feature, and it's part and parcel to our approach to rolling out product, which is having these iterative, smaller modules with various gameplay mechanics that players can get into and access and start to engage in right away. As we know, this is a really long roadmap ahead of us, years ahead of us to get to a complete V1 of the game. But what we're really doing here and what we're announcing with Surge is primarily a stress test or a technical test of our partnership with MetaGravity. And this is our hyperscale user concurrency backend. This is what allows us to get tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of players in a single instance within Star Atlas with no loading screens and no separate instancing and no loading times essentially across the game.
Right.
And so this map is our showroom, and what we've created is a small gameplay mechanic that we call Surge that lets us figure out how many users can we get into a single server, engaged in gameplay, engaged in gunplay, while still having strong performance. And so Surge itself is a team-based third-person shooter. There is an extraction component of this. So you see the 3 tags at the top. Players are able to choose the faction team that they want to join. And then you're running around this map, you're getting kills, you're collecting tags, and you have to get to various extraction points to capture the tags and secure those points for your team. But again, the big part of this is how many players can we get in the server in a single map and have this mass scale third person shooter going on, and figure out if there are any performance issues along the way so we can continue to improve upon those and get to this state where we have massive universe with massive amounts of concurrent players.
Yeah, well, obviously with MetaGravity, you guys are in some good, some good company there with Wilder World, Edge of Chaos, etc., that have been able to kind of go in that direction. So you mentioned the issue of maximum player capacity. What would you say that's going to look like if you do see, a tremendous, uptake on the project?
Well, we're envisioning tens of thousands minimum players in, say, a central space station, which is our social hub. This is where all of the storefronts are, where the commerce centers are, where players have their personal player habitats. It's where the mission center is. You can go select a new mission to go out and complete and earn your XP and progression. But ultimately, again, we see the central space station as the social hub. But to give you maybe a hypothetical example of the way this could also play out is one of the missions could be that a planet, some distant planet, is under attack, and your objective is to go out and with the rest of your faction recapture that. And it could be player versus player or player versus environment. But without the MetaGravity technology, it wouldn't be realistic to have more than a lot of games you see like 4-player instances. That's very common, or maybe a 16-player instance. Or if we look at Battlegrounds, for example, where you can get up to 128 players, that's maximum capacity with performance systems in most games today. No game has ever delivered a 10,000 real person battlefield that everybody can go engage in chaotic battle, and that's where we want to take this. And yeah, I mean, you're looking at some of the past footage that we've had with MetaGravity. Caveat here, a lot of what you're seeing in this particular shot are bots, but this was just our testing of bot-based, network-connected user accounts to make sure that the replication was working. And now that we're rolling into the Surge gameplay mode, we've added the gunplay element to it, so it's actually fun to engage in. And we want to see this number of users running around the map, but real live users. And I will say, just as part of the announcement, we actually ran a small community-based test on Saturday. So a version of this was available. And every Saturday over the next couple of weeks, we are hosting a competitive session where players can come in and engage in this. And ultimately, the goal right now, and this isn't completely set in stone, but on the 20th of this month, we should have an economically incentivized version of this. We're hoping for strong stability by the 20th over the next 3 weeks. But players that come in and all they have to do is participate. They can earn some Atlas while they're playing. They're going to get first access to our crew packs, so they will receive a crew member as a result. And the way we're structuring the tiers behind this is based on the total user concurrency. So as we get more players into the server, stress testing the load of the server, the rewards and incentives get better. So more Atlas and higher tier, higher rarity crew members.
I want to also go into some of the utility and the use case inside games. One clip I want to cut to, this is a Star Citizen clip, and it goes into kind of the shopping UI. I want to get your feedback on this to kind of just tell me a little bit of, do you feel this is something could ever happen within, Star Atlas, or do you feel like this is something that could happen in a lot of different games out there? Let me see if we can cut to that clip.
So today, when you're looking to buy an item, you look at that item and you see a flat piece of UI on the left-hand side of the screen. You then need to interact with this item, and if the price is high enough, it will take you to a confirmation screen in the mobiGlass that shows you more information where you can confirm if you want to proceed with the transaction. With the new mobiGlass being introduced, we took this as an opportunity to remove the old confirmation screen and update some of the UI around the shopping experience. We're no longer going to be directly interacting with the item to purchase it. We'll now have hotkeys that will be displayed on the card. You need to press these hotkeys for a certain amount of time in order to complete the transaction.
The process will happen in the background, and then you will get a notification if it was successful.
You just interact with it, buy the thing, and you're done.
The same will be true for renting if it is a vehicle or something that can be rented.
Obviously, we still have the shopping terminals, so if you want to buy things in bulk, that's probably where you go. But when you're just picking that one thing up quickly, like that.
So very interesting. They were doing some rentals in there as well. So intriguing, obviously this being Star Citizen. And if you look at the commerce side of this, this is a huge, I would think would be a huge opportunity for upselling and just additional revenue. What are your thoughts about something like this, whether it's in Star Atlas or just in Web3 gaming as a whole?
Well, first and foremost, I think that the UI there, as is the case with most things Star Citizen, is inspiring. So I really like the way that they've laid out the UX, the UI, the interface, and way to interact with the objects that you're purchasing. The biggest distinguishing factor between us and Star Citizen is the fact that our marketplace lives on chain with fully activated peer-to-peer transaction possibility introduced since inception. Right now, when you're buying something in Star Citizen, you have it on your account, but to my knowledge, they don't have permissions around being able to sell that to other players. And that's really part of the core ethos of Web 2 is this singular track, this singular flow of value from the user up to the studio itself, which does make sense. However, what I think Web 3 represents is this shared value paradigm wherein players are able to transact with one another. They're having fun. They're completing missions. They're doing cool stuff in the game, but the value that they produce, they're able to directly capture. And so, you're showing one of the marketplace screens here in Star Atlas already, where you can go through and customize your ship. You can customize components and modules, ultimately make that purchase. That purchase interacts and and interfaces directly with our marketplace program that lives on Solana. So that transaction through the engine is actually secured on chain, just as any other Web 2 marketplace or Web 3 marketplace integration. In terms of potential, this is probably one of the largest segments of possibility that I see in the universe of Star Atlas and in this broader idea of the metaverse going into the future. When we were talking about MetaGravity, I touched on these massive social hubs with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of live players running around. Just as in physical world real estate, the location of a storefront, a digital storefront in Star Atlas will be of critical appeal. If you have a good location, you can go and sell items directly to players. And this could be digital cosmetics, NFTs, apparel, emotes, or you could, I think, the potential is there in the future for them to sell physical products to players with an on-chain transaction in the future as well. So the example I use is Nike. We don't have any relationship with Nike, but if they had a shop set up at one of the central space stations, a player could go in, buy a pair of shoes, and maybe get a free NFT to equip on their avatar. And so they're rocking the shoes in real life and on their character in game.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, a tie-in to Artifact would be pretty impressive. With that being the case, you look at scenarios around just what you guys are doing on crew packs, on the PFPs, the mobile companion, all of that, because that kind of ties into what you're talking about, is just the ability to kind of expand on everything from NFTs, obviously in-game assets for kind of the future here. Can you tell me a little bit about that right now as far as the PFPs themselves? Is this something that is you feel is a big part of the future of Star Atlas?
It's an absolutely massive part. It's very likely to be our largest mint and asset sale of this year, but they do play a critical role through all facets of Star Atlas. What I think is really unique about starting with the gaming focused first, specifically on the PFP front, is that we have this intrinsic utility for the asset in a digital environment. And that is just to say that a lot of the PFP projects that have launched, and maybe using Board Ape Yacht Club as an example, they started as a PFP launch and have through time evolved into wanting to produce things like the other side, meta and metaverse gameplay components. Well, we've been building a game since the beginning. This is the first time users will have access to a profile picture or PFP, but it doesn't just stop at the PFP. Sure, you can rock that on your social media profile, but this is also the character that you're running around in game with. This is also the character and pilot of your ship that will have character progression and leveling systems behind it. These same crew members are used in Sage for crafting processes. So the more crew members you have, the faster you can craft items in that Sage economic gameplay loop. And then, of course, coming up later this year, we have the mobile fitness app where you'll once again take this crew member, load that into your mobile phone, go on a walk, run, bicycle ride. And as you do that, you're earning loot, you're leveling up your character, which then is completely interoperable and interwoven into the broader Star Atlas universe, because a higher level character will perform slightly better in Sage and in the Star Atlas MMO and Unreal Engine as well. So all of these things are interconnected. And when I mentioned that we have these three different product verticals, it's very important to emphasize that these are not siloed off. These are all interchangeable and interoperable. And it's because the assets all live on chain and the economy is all on chain, game logic is all on chain. So our approach to this is, how do we achieve greater accessibility to a wider audience of people that can't buy a $3,000 or $4,000 gaming rig PC to play maybe the most immersive version of the game, can still get involved in the economy through the Sage mobile app, through the companion app, or through Sage browser-based game as well. So it's a lot of access points to different people, and it's we really see efficiency in the way that we're coding, because all of these things point back to that same on-chain logic.
And when you talk about interoperability and kind of the connection point here, this is something that we've seen them. This is GoFriends with Devour, but they've started to integrate these other communities. So this is the Saga Genesis token. Planosaurs are tied in now. Mad Lads, a handful of them. So the point behind this, I guess, to your point, is that you've got the capacity here to really kind of expand upon those PFPs. When you look at that, where do you see the best uses for this kind of concept going forward? Because you guys are doing something quite a bit different than a lot of games.
I think it's an extremely promising future. I think it's going to take us some time, and there are real benefits like cross-pollination of communities by having various integration points. I would say where we're at in our life cycle right now is the teams that we've spoken to, it's more of an external kind of seeding of Star Atlas IP into other game environments versus their game assets coming into Star Atlas. But this is all still very exciting and lets us tap into these other communities, get them involved in Star Atlas, and show off all of the things that we've been working on.
Will the crew NFTs be available on Magic Eden? Is that something that's going to be available soon, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, I mean, kind of another leak or debut here is we're looking at probably 5 or 6 weeks for these crew packs to be sold.
Okay.
All of the R&D that we've done on the tech is leading us to CNFT standards, so compressed NFTs on Solana. So CNFTs are natively supported on Tensor, on Magic Eden, on other Solana-based marketplaces. So yes, we should see support on those outside marketplaces at launch.
I want to go to a clip. Now, okay, so we were talking about AI a little bit earlier, and you look at in-world AI, the use case. This was something that was done by Parallel, and I wanted to get your feedback on it. Let's go to that clip real quick.
Welcome to a new colony update. In this case, we wanted to explore using in-world AI's technology to interact with our avatars and allow players to immerse themselves into the Parallel lore.
Hello, soldier. What's your name?
I am Pilot Officer Theo from the Orbital Patrol Division. I pilot the ships that protect Mars. Now tell me, what is your
I'm looking for Catherine.
Catherine? Commander Catherine Lapointe, the Mad General? What business do you have with her?
So what do you think about AI generation in-game like that? Is this something that would be in your roadmap? I mean, we showed just a small clip there. What are your thoughts?
It is for sure for a number of reasons. One of them is this concept of player collisions or player interactions. And so in particular, when you're building this massive universe, there could be vast areas of space where no real players are actually flying around or landing on a planet or interacting with something. So the ability to populate the universe with AI agents as a replacement for human-like interactions is a very strong use case for that particular technology. We have not really done any experimentation with that to date, but yes, 100% looking at AI agents in game. And the example that I've used a lot on this is that I genuinely think we'll see people that have boyfriends, girlfriends, relationships with these autonomous agents in video games as a part of kind of the social structure and social fabric of video games in the future. And I'm not pushing for a dystopian future per se, but I do think that there's very real potential for that. But ultimately, in terms of the immersiveness of a game, being able to interact directly with an NPC and not have to go through a menu of predetermined responses, how cool is that going to be, where you feel like even more so that you're genuinely interacting with another player or a real experience in the game.
Yeah, for sure. Careful what we ask for on these. It feels like it anyway, this advancements that we're seeing here. This was a quick post by Wilder World. And there's Frank kind of talking about the weapons industry. They're kind of moving along here. And you kind of, jumped in on this. But the point being, you guys are having some fun out there. But point being is that you look at cross-chain, the potential for assets like this. You look at the cross-chain components of what you guys did with PURI. This is another good example. What do you think the future is in those kinds of environments of being able to really kind of take it to next level, especially around cross? I know you guys are doing, I think it was on your roadmap. Let me go back over to your roadmap. Let me see if I have it. Yeah, I think it was in season 3. Yeah, right here. Season 3. You had pets on your roadmap right here in season 3. What do you think is going to be the future of how this would transition for Star Atlas?
Well, just starting with Wilder World, I'm a really big fan of those guys and the work that they're doing and the quality of the product that they're rolling out. We we just were at GDC together collectively. Earth 2 was there, us, Wilder World, Edge of Chaos you mentioned.
Right.
This was under the banner of MetaGravity. We're all working with that same technology for user scaling. I definitely see a future ahead where there is some integration with YME and with the Wilder World team. One of the ways we've envisioned this potentially rolling out is through something we're calling tangential world tech. So if, for example, the world of YME lived inside the universe of Star Atlas, then players are able to connect to our client, traverse the world on a spaceship, dock or land in the YME planet, and now you kind of enter into this new aesthetic and new environment that is created entirely by them. So that's that might be a little bit far-fetched. That's a kind of a very ambitious vision to have, but that's one way that I would see these integration points taking place. And again, it really takes teams like Wilder, like AtMTA, our studio, who are building this best-in-class experience to work together to reconcile how we can make those technical challenges I outlined, as well as any of those economic challenges I outlined. So again, really like what Wilder team is doing. Otherwise, with respect to things like pets. Now, PURI and that PURI coin that launched, this was a meme token that was launched by people within our community. I would only note that we have taken a very progressive and favorable approach to utilization of Star Atlas intellectual property. We have a build program at build.staratlas.com. And for the most part, any teams that want to build something using the Star Atlas IP are able to do that, generate $1 million in revenue with no rev share into us whatsoever. And then beyond that first $1 million in gross revenue, then we have rev share agreements that kick in anywhere from 3 to 10% of their gross revenue. But we've seen some 65 different companies spin up operations that are selling apparel and merch and computer peripherals. They're selling jewelry. They're selling 3D printed models of our ships. All of this is really cool, innovative stuff. We simply don't have the capacity to build, and we're giving that opportunity to other people. PURI is along the same lines. It's using our PURI character or pet intellectual property. They spun up a meme coin off of it, and now they're building their whole game, an entire game that they're calling Purigachi. So this is the type of really cool composable stuff that can be created using blockchain.
Well, the good thing is, too, I think you guys' approach toward IP has been one that is starting to break some rules as well. Because typically, if you look at Web 2 and really the evolution of any of the gaming ecosystems, you would never see that kind of behavior from those kind of studios out there. So that's good that you guys are doing that, Michael. And I know our team, they've been trying to figure out how do we get a PBN TechPath guild launched within Star Atlas. So that's another one. There you go. Great opportunity.
Well, we don't have to troubleshoot it here on set, but we did launch our DAC platform, our decentralized autonomous corporation platform. This is effectively the guilds of Star Atlas, and we've had probably hundreds of guilds already registered on that. It's fully on-chain guild registration and member recruiting. You've got it here. Perfect. So this is at play.staratlas.com. You can explore DACs, or you can register your own and start recruiting.
I've got some ideas on the IP already. You know, as you mentioned that, I was like, wait a minute, this would be, because we have a huge gaming ecosystem out there that follows us. This would be another opportunity to kind of spread the word around. Because really, it boils down to one thing for the future of Web3 gaming, and that is adoption. And adoption is through people learning about it for the first time, testing things out, trying to figure out what's happening in those communities. Obviously, Star Atlas has done a really great job to everything you guys have done. So congrats to you, Michael, for sure.
Thank you. I do think that within Web3, we have a very strong value proposition, despite some of the skepticism that exists in the traditional gaming space, which is still present. But I think that that's just a misunderstanding of what's being proposed here. Again, shared value exchange, the ability to use IP, the ability to truly own your assets and trade those freely with other players, produce revenue in game. So ultimately, it does come down to a strong, enjoyable entertainment experience. That's why we're building a best-in-class game. But when you couple that with all of the advantages of blockchain, it's a strongly superior offering to players. I think it's inevitable that this Web3 gaming just becomes gaming, and it is the future of the industry.
Totally agree with that. I'm glad that from your perception, because I think you're right. You hit on a very key point. is that there has been a lot of, I think, miscommunication, but it usually happens in the early days because of some of the scammery that does occur in any new evolution of technology. It always happens, but then the real players step in, and that's when it becomes something really serious. So I think you guys are one of them. So it's great to have you on the show. By the way, we got to get you back in talking more releases in the future. So thanks so much for stopping in. We appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Paul. Great chatting with you.
All right, so you guys, if you're tuned in over on the podcast side of things, man, you just missed an unbelievable show of not only great gaming IP in the Web3 space, but I think also the understanding of how communities are built. Because this, to me, is one of the ones that you've got to keep your eye on, and that is, of course, Star Atlas. So make sure and jump over here to the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit a couple of likes. It'll get our show into your feed, and you'll start to learn a little bit more about why this is such an important, component of really the future of blockchain, crypto, and Web3 all coming together because the tech is here now. If you guys are not following me on X, make sure and do that. It's just @PaulBaron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.